You're live now. All right.
All right. It's Friday, April 26, 2013, and this is Arizona Mining Review. I'm your host, Lee Allison from the Arizona Geological Survey here in Tucson, and we apologize for those of you who tuned in a moment ago. We had some unexpected problem in our audio video stream shut down just as we went live, and we had to reboot it. So some of you may be just coming back on, so we apologize for that. It's one of the challenges of doing online broadcasting like this. But we've got a great set of guests today. Dorothy Kosich from Mineweb.com is joining us from Reno to take a look at the Obama budget for mining and mineral resources. Dr. Kent Hill from Arizona State University is going to be telling us about a new report on the economic impacts of mining on Arizona. And from Kennecott Copper in Salt Lake City, Ted Himebaugh is going to be updating us on the massive landslide that shut down the Bingham Canyon copper mine a couple of weeks ago and what that means for copper production in the U.S. And then we're going to wrap up this morning with Niall Nemeth, our regular contributor from our economic geology section in Phoenix, who's got some updates on a new in situ copper project being developed in the Miami area. So now from Reno, live is Dorothy Kosich, who's the deputy editor of Mineweb.com, the online news source that covers mining. Dorothy, thanks for joining us.
Hello, Lee.
Well, I got to tell you, Mineweb is one of my favorite sites. It's one of the first things I look at every morning. It's a tremendous resource, so we're really excited to have you here with us. Now, a couple weeks ago, you wrote a story on Mineweb about the Obama administration's fiscal 14 budget proposal and the impacts on mining and mineral resources. And you had a pretty tough opening sentence on your story. Let me read that. The Obama administration's dislike for the U.S. hard rock mining industry remains as strong as ever as an abandoned mine lands fee, a proposed new mineral leasing and royalty process on federal lands, combined with cuts in mineral research, were included in the president's proposed 2014 federal budget. What do you see that's wrong with the budget for mining and mineral resources?
Well, the first thing that hit me is I noticed that he's willing to fund mining out in space while he cuts mining domestically.
Yeah, well, I think your subtitle on the article mentioned a plan to mine asteroids. What is that?
Uh, I understand why it's a priority. When the asteroid in Russia just shocked the heck out of people a month or so ago, um, President Obama now is saying we need somehow to study the science to be able to capture an asteroid. And NASA is hoping once they capture the asteroid, then they can learn how to extract things from that asteroid to enable long-term space travel. And so that's the goal of that. And like I say, I understand the need to have that sort of program. But what disturbs me is he's making budget cuts or enacting new fees and taxes within the Bureau of Land Management budget. And that's what has me concerned is I think that either he should not take such a hard stance towards domestic mining, or he should rethink that space program goals and use some of the funds, hopefully, to allow domestic mining to continue on.
Okay, I think in your story you mentioned $78 million to mine asteroids, and yet the USGS Mineral Resources Program is being cut by a net 2.4 million, which is about 50% cut. Is that do I have those numbers right?
I'm not really sure on that. I'm sorry, I
Okay.
stink at math.
Okay, fair enough.
But the USGS has been cut so much over the years. I hail back to the days of the U.S. Bureau of Mines when they destroyed, frankly, they got rid of that. The government got rid of that. And now the USGS is more and more into biodiversity and environmental issues, which is great for them, I guess. But unfortunately, a lot of the mining services that serve the mining industry are being cut, and that disturbs me.
Okay. Well, the other two things in your article you mentioned the abandoned mine land fee. So that would charge a fee now for mining on both public and private lands. And my understanding is Hal Quinn, the president of the National Mining Association, calls it a tax on dirt. And so I think he was saying that the fee would be not just for production of mineral resources, but there'd be a fee on moving any dirt at all and getting ready for mining, and that would go then into a program to restore hard rock mines in the Western U.S. Is that your understanding of it?
I gather that it's ironic that that fee's been around for quite a long time, and members of the mining industry, some members of the mining industry, see it as punitive. But at the same time, I guess there is a need. There always has been a need to reclaim abandoned mines. We have that problem in Nevada, for instance. And so I do understand the justification for having some sort of fee. It's the amount probably that is the problem.
Okay, and then the 5% gross royalties on federal lands. What I've heard back from the mining industry folks is that they're willing to discuss some kind of royalties, but as a trade-off, they'd like to see if some of the permitting could be speeded up. What are you hearing back from the industry, either in response to your article or in your kind of keeping track of what's going on in the industry? What's their response on the royalties?
Honestly, the industry is very good at keeping things from the press, including reporters that specialize in mining. So I truly do not have much feedback about it. But I will add this. I recently attended a memorial service for John Livermore, who is one of the co-founders of the Carlin Trend. And it was pointed out during the service that there would be no Nevada mining right now if it wasn't for the efforts of John Livermore and the other co-founders. One of the things John Livermore tried to do like 20 years ago is address mining law compromise and not have it get to the point of where it is right now politically. And it's a shame because there were serious efforts made years ago, and unfortunately, one or two mining companies would object to it, then they die, or something strange would happen over in Congress. So I don't know if this will ever get resolved, and I'm sorry it drags on and drags on like this.
Okay. Dorothy, thanks very much for sharing your insights. I'm hoping we can get you back on some of our future programs.
Lee, it's a pleasure to be on this program. I consider it an honor. Thank
Great.
you.
Good to talk to you, Dorothy. All right. Well, next, we're delighted to have Dr. Kent Hill from the L. William Seidman Research Institute in the W.P. Carey School of Business at Arizona State University. Dr. Hill is joining us live from Tempe to talk about a new study on the economic impact of the mining industry on the state of Arizona for 2011. Welcome to the Arizona Mining Review, Dr. Hill. Oh, okay, we're still bringing them up. I think we're just, okay, the connection is just coming up now. Okay, so welcome to the Arizona Mining Review, Dr. Hill.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we're excited to have you on and talk about this new study. What are the key points that you'd like to make about the study? How big a deal is mining to the economy of Arizona?
You know, what used to be taught in the public schools was 40 years ago were the 5 C's, which included copper. And that kind of acronym is a little dated now. I guess we have some new C's like computer chips and call centers, but some of the other ones have kind of declined, at least in relative importance. But copper is still very much a top 5 export-based industry in the state. And almost any way you look at the numbers, it really kind of comes through. So what I did in this report is use information from all of the copper mining and some other mining industries in the state. They gave us information on their employment and who their suppliers are and the taxes they pay. And in the report, we just kind of put all this together and assess how important mining is for the economy of Arizona.
Well, the numbers in going through the report, one of the things that really struck me was the comparison of labor income per worker. And I think you were showing something that's perhaps twice the income for somebody in the mining sector versus Arizona jobs overall. What are those numbers?
Yeah, that's something that really stands out about mining, is that it's a very high-paying industry. If you just look at wages and salaries, which is a kind of narrow definition of compensation, it's $80,000 per worker on average across all the different jobs, and it's much higher than the statewide average. And then if you look at benefits, if you throw those in as well, you're almost to about $110,000 of average compensation per worker. And the statewide average is something more like $50,000. So mining is not only important in the sense that it brings more jobs to the state, but really it raises the average quality of jobs and the average standard of living in the state.
Now that's an interesting fact there. If we didn't have mining, did you do an estimate of what what it would make, how big a difference it would make to the average annual income over Arizona at all, and where that would move us nationally?
Well, mining employment makes up about 1.5% of total Arizona employment. So if you were to remove it entirely from the state, it wouldn't have a huge impact on the average income in the state, but it certainly plays its own part in raising average income in Arizona. And if you just look at the absolute numbers here that we're talking about, like I talk about in the report, the industry, if you include all the direct and indirect effects, accounts for about 50,000 jobs in Arizona. It still plays a very important role to the state.
Okay. Now, I think on one of your graphs you were showing that Pima County had more mining jobs than any of the others in 2011. Yeah, I think we've just brought that graph up where mining employment by county for 2011 shows 2,449 jobs in Pima County. And Maricopa only at 906. I think what's significant there is that there's 1,300, 1,500, 1,500 in some of the rural counties. So in some of those rural counties away from the major population centers, it looked like mining is probably one of the bigger impacts on those county economies.
Oh, it absolutely is, both in terms of employment and also the tax contributions that mining companies make, especially property taxes. But the graphic you're referring to is just looking at the county distribution where direct mining jobs are. And like you say, they are concentrated in a few of the less populated counties, excluding Pima County, of course. Maricopa County is home to the corporate headquarters of Freeport-McMoRan, and so there are some jobs there. Another graphic, which I have in the report, looks more broadly at the direct and indirect jobs that are supported by mining. So this would include some of the professional services that are purchased by mining companies and other indirect kind of jobs. And there the results look very, very different. A lot of the jobs, especially the indirect jobs that are supported, are in the major urban areas. So Maricopa County stands to indirectly benefit quite a bit from mining operations.
Okay, we've just brought up that one. I think this one is the one you're referring to, total economic or total employment impacts by county, showing 18,177 in Maricopa.
Yeah, so a county like Maricopa County with Phoenix, of course, is an important supplier of engineering services and legal services and environmental services, those kind of things that mining companies purchase. And any major urban area is really important in supporting smaller cities and less populated counties in terms of wholesale trade services and financial services and transportation services. This is very, very common in any state. The large urban areas in a state are very much connected to the less populated areas.
Okay, fantastic. I was just looking through, glancing through some of the other numbers. There's just an amazing amount of information in here. I know you're focusing primarily on copper. How big is copper relative to the rest of mining in Arizona?
Well, we looked at coal, gold and silver, and uranium as other mining components of the mining industry. We didn't look at rock and sand and gravel. Those are important mining related operations, and those are much bigger. But if you just looked at, as I said, coal and gold operations and a little bit of uranium, those are about a tenth the size, we might say, of copper mining, for example, as measured by employment. So copper is still very much king here and is the dominant component. But in this year's report, we tried to be a little broader, and we tried for the first time to measure the contribution of other mining segments to the overall industry.
That's fantastic. We've heard some numbers that, at least before the recession, that the aggregate sand and gravel industry in the state was probably fourth nationwide, which is, if you look at the population size of economies, it was a surprise that with, 6 million people or so in Arizona, that we were using the fourth largest amount of aggregate and building materials. Now, since the recession, that seems to be down quite a bit, but with housing starting to come back, were you starting to see any trends in the industrial mineral segment?
I haven't looked at them, but absolutely they're connected. And there's no doubt that that kind of activity in this segment is just driven by the in-migration of people and building, and that's not going away. So I'm sure as the housing industry comes back and we start building streets and roads and laying driveways and so forth, that all of that kind of activity will get real strong again.
Fantastic. Okay. Dr. Hill, thank you so much for joining us. This is an exciting study. I think we're really impressed with what the impacts are. And now the question is, when is the 2012 study going to be out?
We're in the survey process right now, and I expect to have all those collected within a month or so. And then probably I would look at another couple of months out from there. So towards the end of the summer, maybe the middle, towards the end of the summer, I hope to have a new report out.
Great. And I hope you'd be willing to come back when that's available and give us the updates and share what you've learned on that new report.
I'd love to do it.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, and we'll be getting back to you and hope to see the new results in a few months.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, we're moving now to call in from Ted Himebaugh, the general manager from Kennecott Copper in Salt Lake City, Utah. On April 10th, there was a massive landslide in the Bingham Canyon copper mine in the Ochre Mountains west of Salt Lake City. That mine produced about 25% of all the copper produced in the United States in 2011, and that translated to about 2% of world copper. So it's been very intense time for Kennecott Copper up there as they've tried to deal with this gigantic landslide. We're bringing Ted aboard here in just a moment on Skype, but just yesterday the company for the first time let the news media back into the pit and has some update on the situation. We're very interested in understanding what happened within the Kennecott pit to know, is that something that we need to worry about in other open mines around the country, around the world? We need to understand what the impact will be of losing that much of the nation's copper supply on copper production, what it means for Arizona, which produces about 2/3 of the copper in the U.S. And then also, parent company of Kennecott is Rio Tinto, who's developing the underground Resolution copper mine in Arizona. So one of the questions we have is, how will this slide impact Rio Tinto's operating budget and what it might mean for development elsewhere? And I understand we've now got Ted on the line. So Ted, thank you very much for joining us this morning. I understand how busy you are, and we appreciate you sneaking out for a few minutes to talk to us.
I'm happy to talk to you today.
Okay. Well, I understand you took the news media into the pit yesterday for the first time, and that you're getting a little bit more understanding of what's going on. Can you just give us a little bit of an assessment? I know you've sent us a few pictures here of what happened, and we can bring up some of the slides that you sent us whenever you want to. But can you give us an overall assessment? What happened? What caused this, and where do you stand today?
Well, if you look at the pictures, particularly the before picture, you'll see the what is the east wall of the Bingham Canyon mine, the northeast wall of the Bingham Canyon mine.
Okay, we have that up now.
The building in the foreground was the truck shop. We're in the process of actually moving to some facilities that are further to your left as you look there. And that's Bingham Canyon, actually, where that truck shop sits. So Bingham Canyon goes further to the east down that way to orient yourself with the pit. You can look across the pit in that picture, and you'll see a structure about halfway down the wall. That's the in-pit crusher, and you'll see the conveyor system that goes to a 3.5-mile tunnel that goes through the wall of the pit to the copper to concentrator. The east wall has many, you can see where it is primarily quartzites, and then down into monzonites as you get lower into the pit. And those quartzites are intersected by a number of sedimentary beds, siltstones, sandstones, whatever that actually came through those areas. Those are developed into, and I'm not a geologist, so please forgive me for what technical errors I might make in my descriptions. But those beds are actually formed into skarns in the mineralized area. They go down through the bottom of the pit to your right and back up the walls on the other side. The orientation of those beds, both in strike and dip, and the fact that they are weaker planes, though they're inactive from a geologic standpoint, has caused us to design the pit walls to allow the capture of them or containment of those beds and the material that sits on top of them. In fact, the east wall of the pit was even designed in if you could see it completely here, in a zigzag type pattern that actually mined out a lot of the material that might be in a failure plane, so the walls stand at varying different angles across the east side of the pit, making it not a circular, but I'll call it a zigzag. This fault that you may be able to faintly see in the slope that comes down to from the kind of high point above the truck shop there down, you can see probably the main-fay beds, main-fay bed, primary bed. That area, which would be to the left and all the way to the top of the mountain, that whole area, somewhere around 2.5 months ago, began to move at some very slow rates. We had the ability to monitor that. We have some IBIS radar systems and some ground probe, but the IBIS looks about half of the width of the pit. You can look at half this, certainly across the diameter, and gives us a chance to map that with radar and showing it or depicting as pixels, and measure inward, outward, upward, downward, or to the side, any movement whatsoever. We saw movement in a fairly large mass of material at very low rates. That wasn't alarming, quite frankly, except for the extensive area that was moving, even though it was very small. And through modeling other things, we're able to determine as time went on that this mass was going to fail down to the main fay bed. It was actually moving out into the pit a little bit, just as we saw it. We monitored it. We began to make operations such that we could continue operations prior to and after any material movement, and projecting what that might be. Our ability to actually note from a time standpoint when things would occur, not exactly how fast they may accelerate down that path to failure, but the ability to know when we're at certain points and want to do certain things as far as the operation and safety were concerned. That worked fairly flawlessly as we moved through the period of time the mass was moving. And then on April 10, we were out of the bottom of the pit, not operating, no people in the area. We were basically waiting for it to do its thing. And so that comes to the next picture, the set of pictures. And if you go to the pictures, I think it says slide 3. And you look at that, if you can see them side by side, you would see the picture in the upper left-hand corner that shows what the material did. So the material that we had outlined for that said we're going to move is about what moved. The fact that it all reported to the bottom of the pit was something that was that we didn't plan on. You can see from those pictures that the in-pit crusher and conveyor system are all intact. That was a good part, but in order to operate the bottom of the pit, we had certain equipment that was stationed there, and we were prepared to operate in an isolated fashion for a period of time till we could reassess and get access across it. Most of the material from the, there is an escarpment at the top, you can see there, but reported to the bottom of the pit. We have estimated that, and we don't have complete accurate measurements of all that to be over or around 150 million tons involved of short tons of material. The other pictures show you some things in the bottom that don't really orient you too well in the bottom to show you, but they do show you that virtually the bottom of the pit is covered. It varies in depth. We had some equipment that was impacted. You can see it there as well. And on the last slides, you can even see some things that showed where there were some underground facilities that were primarily they were joint beneficial declines, declines that would go to serve as access for wall drainage, installation of drainage fans on the north and the south side of the pit, and also access decline to future work on the north rim scarn on the north wall of the pit. Those facilities were impacted, as well as some maintenance areas we had set up. So you can see virtually from where the bottom of the pit was in the shovel there as before to the after. There's upwards in some places up to 400 feet of material that reported to the bottom of the pit. So that our victory in this, from a Kennecott standpoint, is, and a Rio Tinto standpoint, is honestly our safety aspects of this slide work flawlessly. We could be disappointed and upset and mad at the equipment issues, because we didn't have to be sad about any people issues. That's probably the thing that we carry thankfulness and pride. First thankfulness, and then second pride for protecting our employees, and to the assets the best we could, what we knew. It behaved, and I think this is maybe, it behaved a bit more like an avalanche than it did a slide. We don't have that assessment made. Currently, we have gone in and we're monitoring all the slopes in the pit, and have been working hand in hand with Mine Safety Health Administration to get orders removed so we can resume operations in certain parts of the pit. The big pushback on the south side, which, if you went back to your original picture, is sort of seen in the from that little peak that's almost center picture again in the background to your right. It goes quite a ways around the pit. That's our cornerstone pushback. All that is intact, and we're mining. Have even mined upwards of better than we have a few more pieces of equipment up there than we need, but that we actually have available to us, and we've had some 500,000 ton days plus of production out of the out of the upper stripping part of the mine. Currently, we have some stockpiles outside the pit that we've been able to run some material to the concentrators via overland road while we both assess and get ready to mine in the bottom of the pit. I would say that returning to mining in the bottom of the pit in some limited areas could be said to be imminent at this point in time. We would expect in the next day or even today to do that. As we told the press, and that's what we're working towards. The assessment of the slide and all the remediation work so we can move back into that area and work in that area and reestablish roads and ramps, that's really not complete. And so the impact on the business is not evaluated either. Certainly shutting down, that we all know what impact that is, but with respect to operating and what level we will be able to sustain operations and downstream processing facilities is not known presently. So I heard you mentioning some things about impact in that when you were first mentioning, and I wouldn't be able to actually comment on that at this point because we're in the process of reestablishing. That's good news. To the level, what level we can run at and profitably sustain our operations downstream, that's not known. We do have every intention, of course, of operating at the maximum level that we can. And the spirit of getting back in operation and moving that direction has been very, very good. Sometimes people make predictions, oh, you won't do this for this long, for this long. I don't think we made any predictions except for investors and whatnot. We indicated that we produce half the copper out of Bingham Canyon that we intended to this year. We will look at that and see how all that turns out. We don't know right now.
Okay.
So that's it. It's a slide that we had fairly well sized, but the behavior of the material was significantly different than we presumed. We were able to cover all human health, human and safety and health aspects as we had planned. The impact to some equipment in the bottom and facilities was greater than we planned.
Well, Ted, I got to thank you on a couple levels here. One is that a lot of my colleagues have already commented about how open and transparent Kennecott's been about this, sharing information, and the information you've just given us has been phenomenal, particularly from the geologic side of things. A lot of stuff that none of us have heard about. I think we have a much better understanding of what happened here, what may have been unique within the Bingham Canyon pit, lessons that we need to learn for operating in other pits here in Arizona, around the country. And I also want to congratulate you on a remarkable achievement of predicting this, evacuating, and making sure that there wasn't even a single injury in what may be the one of the largest landslides ever, but certainly what's shaping up to be one of the most expensive landslides, not only in U.S. but perhaps world history. So I know how busy you are. I know the pressure's on you. Thank you so much for taking the time this morning to inform our viewers about what's going on, and we all wish you very best in your operations and getting back online.
Well, thank you for that. I'm glad I could speak to you today, and we certainly hope that the lessons learned here will be just as transparent for the mining industry, because we certainly think that things like this in the pits, be it in Arizona, where I'm a native and grew up there, or wherever, we would want to be able to learn so that others could be able to benefit from the learnings here. So we'll look forward to that as well, and I think Rio Tinto and Kennecott will be pretty transparent about the things that others can benefit from with respect to what we learn here.
That's great. Well, again, thanks very much, and we'll be following this very closely, so appreciate you giving us so much great information.
You're certainly welcome.
Well, that pretty much wraps up our episode today. We've run out of time. We'll be bringing Niall Nemeth in probably next month to talk about the new In Situ Copper project up in the Miami area. So thank you for tuning in today. Let me thank our production crew here at the Arizona Geological Survey. The program's produced by Mike Conway. Working behind the control panel is Jordan Maddy. Technical work by Ron Palmer, and then we have our great design and video staff with Stephanie Marr, Arnie Bermudez, and Rowena Davis. So if you missed this show live today, it'll be on our YouTube channel probably by this afternoon. And tune in next month when we hope to have as exciting and interesting a package of stories to tell you as we did today. Thanks and goodbye.